Axe likes this very much.
Welcome to
Coffee with Toffees.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Let's do this.
And welcome back to another episode of Coffee with Toffees, guys. My name is Toffees. As always, bringing you the Dota you need, the news you need on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, morning, noon, and night. It's always available, and we're glad that you guys could join us here. We've got an interesting night for you. I've got a couple of different things going on. We've got guests on the docket. So Bruno, you may know him from some things like he did Dota Academy with the other Bruno once upon a time. And he also writes articles for Gozu. He's done some stuff for Liquid. And he's working on an article with a lawyer right now that's upcoming on esports and regulations. So we're going to have him on later on in the show to talk sort of as an expert about a lot of what's going on in the news right now. By the news, of course, I mean Dota 2 news. After that, we're going to move on to a great segment where you, the callers, can call in. So if you're interested in doing that, you can go ahead and add up the Razer comms. Go ahead and put that on. Get involved. Send a friend request to Toffees. It's just straight up Toffees, nothing difficult, and I will make sure that we get you in so that you have a chance to call in and speak your mind on the show. That's a new feature for Fridays, so get involved with that. But before we do it, we have to roll into pro news. But what's the biggest thing on the docket? I'll tell you right now, and that is a big shout out to the sponsors, because Coffee with Toffees is brought to you by Namecheap.com. Namecheap, they are a domain registrar that cares about internet freedom and esports. Go check them out and register a new domain at Namecheap.com right now, because I think they're willing to put their money into small ventures to help esports grow, and you gotta love, you gotta respect that. That said, let's talk about the tournament roundup. That's what we do on Friday nights. We get caught up on all of the tournament news and the pro news that's going on in the scene. That's what we're going to start out with right here, right now. Things that have been happening in the scene that are worthy of note, that need to be mentioned, that you have to know about. The first one that I think was kind of one of the biggest pieces of news, though maybe not the biggest surprise to a lot of folks, was that Meepwned gets pwned. Meepwned has called it quits. They've thrown in the towel, and just like their namesake, they have gone poof 5 times. They will no longer be playing a competitive Dota. They have called it quits and backed out of the tournaments that they are already in. So no more Meepwned. Next piece of news is going to be that Jerax, you might know him from Team Tinker, well, not anymore. He is leaving and headed for MVP.Hot 6. So MVP Hot 6 will be happy to get a player. Jerax, a great player, did a great job with Tinker, but just not going to stick around. And one of the reasons I think his departure took place was Patzel, another player for Tinker, also departed just before that to return to his original team of Void Boys. He left Void Boys for Tinker and did not remain with them. He decided that it was not working out and headed on back to the original crew that he started out with. So Tinker pretty much eviscerated at this point, and I'm curious to see what they do to continue rolling as we start that kind of long trek towards TI. Stabilization going to be a big deal. Last piece of pro transfer news is that 7mad, fucking mad, however you want to say it, has left Summoner's Rift for Alliance. Now, Summoner's Rift has been doing a great job. That said, Alliance is a legend, and I have to understand and appreciate why he's making this choice. What this does, however, is it shakes a lot of rosters up, guys. We are in the home stretch. We're coming up to TI5. We're looking down the chute, okay? Invites go out in May. It is already March. That's 2 months away, and we have very few teams with stable rosters. So that is something that we need to consider. We should see these transfers that happen in the next week, I hope to goodness, stay where they are, because we cannot continue to have these shifts rolling into May, and I guess we can. What do I care? Really, at the end of the day, it's these teams need to get their rosters in order so that they are able to come forward and they are able to enter and get those bids that they need. And over in chat, GG Shostakovich, that's a hell of a name, buddy, has pointed it out. He said 6 months to TI, 3 months to invites, and we have 3 confirmed rosters. We know that Secret's solid. We know that EG is solid. We know that C9 is solid, and there's a couple of others out there as well that aren't going to be shifting anytime soon. I think like LVT will probably get an invite to qualifiers, but as far as the big dogs go, it's not looking great at the moment. So let's hope they pick that up, fix what they need to fix, and everybody gets themselves back on track. So that's pro news. Let's roll it over to the tournament roundup, because that's the next thing on the docket. And we'll start out with eSportal. The last of the invite qualifiers ended this week, and Ninjas in Pajamas went ahead and took home that win. Now I'm going to go on a caveat here with the manager of Ninjas in Pajamas to try and, I feel like somebody just ran behind me, to try and get a guest onto the show to talk, one of the team players to kind of talk about what they've been doing. Ninja Pajamas is one of those teams that sort of gotten better and better and better over the last few months. So we're working on that. That said, they have qualified. 6 teams will go to the grand finals of eSportal. The last round is an open tournament. This is interesting because Power Rangers, Alliance, Vega, and Virtus Pro are teams that have played in most of the invite qualifiers and have not made it into the big tournament. So what we're going to see is potentially these teams joining the open qualifier and earning their way in. But right now, Empire, My Insanity, Ninjas in Pajamas, Aces Polar, and Hellraisers are the 5 teams going. I predict that Alliance or Power Rangers will very likely join them, but if you want a chance at playing those teams, go sign up for the Open, because eSportal Open is coming up in just a couple of weeks. That's the eSportal update for you. Rolling over to Dota Pit. Dota Pit's a big one. We got a lot of stuff to talk about in terms of the different groups. So let's run through that right now. Group A is starting to fall out. Cloud9 has 4-2. Ninjas in Pajamas is 3-1 in second place. But keep in mind, Evil Genius has only played 2 games so far. It's actually 1 game because it's a best of 2 series. So expect to see them climb up pretty far. Fire's dropped out. Team Tinker, after losing 2, I don't expect them to be really in the mix too much. So this does look like an EG Cloud9 advance, with Ninjas in Pajamas and Aces Polar maybe having a chance to challenge for that top position. Second grouping, Group B is going to be Secret on top at 6-2. No big surprise there. If I had an air horn, I would blow it and say, not surprised. But that's exactly what happened. Secret, 6-2, running that category, doing very well for themselves. Empire, what surprise, 4-2, kicking butt and taking names. Will they stick? That's the real question. Because behind them is Alliance, Virtus Pro, Hellraisers, and Vega Squadron. Vega, probably not going to happen. They're a bit out of the mix. But everyone else has a chance to close that gap, as they haven't played that many games yet. So keep an eye on that one. Secret goes through. Can everyone else catch Empire? Because that's the race we're looking at on Dota Pit. Now, let's jump to the next tournament we want to talk about here is Join Dota MLG Pro League. If you want a tournament with a lot of names, that's the one to watch. Now, we got a lot of different brackets, but things are starting to sort of fall into place. We're getting a good vision of how they're going. In Group 1 for the Pro League Europe, we've got Hellraisers at 8-0 on top, but they are challenged aggressively by the Balkan Bears, who are 7-1, and well, they were by Team Tinker, who's 7-3, but again, who knows what's going to happen now that they've lost 2 of their players. Down in Group 2, we've got Ninjas in Pajamas sitting at 9-1, Moscow 5 behind them at 9-5, and Empire and what used to be Meepwned, who is no more, trying to bring it up. So expect Ninjas in Pajamas to advance, and I would not be surprised to see Empire and Moscow 5 fighting for that second qualifier spot. So that is the European Pro League. For America, we've got... Here it is. For America, we've got EG up on up on top. Once again, no big surprise. Blow the air horn if you like. They are 12-2, so they are crushing it in Pro League America. Some might say because of ping issues or connection stuff. We're going to talk about that later, because I don't think that that's necessarily the case. They're dominating because they've been playing very well, and honestly, when you compare them to the rest of their bracket, they've got that position locked in. Not Today is surprising me at 11-3, doing a great job. Summoner's Rift at 9-5. The real disappointment for me right now has been, and I hate to say this because I know that you guys know I'm a fan of you, EHUG at 5-9, man, are just really, really struggling to get out of this ditch. Complexity also at 6-6, just not be able to stand their ground in the MLG America. So that is the MLG for Asia right now. We do have Invasion Esports out on top at 10-4, Rave behind at 8-4, MVP Phoenix at 8-4, and Arcanist at 8-6. So look for a huge race to the end. This is, whether or not you like SEA Dota, this is going to be the horse race. This is the Churchill Downs. This is the Preakness. This is the Triple Crown, baby. These guys, these teams are going to be hauling ass to get that qualifier. 1 spot. 5 teams in contention. definitely worth a watch because all of those matter. So that's going to be a pretty good lineup. Definitely keep an eye on that tournament. I know it's on MLG, so you're probably not watching it, but at the end of the day, do you care about where you're watching Dota or that you're watching Dota? That's the real question. Next tournament, let's roll over to it. Summit 3 is up, and we're talking about that. I got a show all for you here. The brackets are in place for the European side of things. The way it's going to break down when the Summit 3 qualifiers start. So we did the pre-qualifiers, now we're in the qualifiers. Secret, Anchors, Na'Vi, Alliance, Empire, Aces, Polar, Ninjas in Pajamas, and a Cloud9. This is going to be the brawl for the ages, man. These are all great teams. They're going to crush it and tear through. I think Na'Vi and Alliance starts off the great old-fashioned throwdown. Should still be a lot of fun. They're not what they used to be, but they're both about even, and I think I'm really going to enjoy that match. Team Secret, probably going to have a comfortable first round, but I think we'll see some really great Dota coming out of this division. American Division, not quite done yet. So far, not today. Leviathan, Wheel, EHUG, Complexity, and EG have made it in. We're waiting on the last two positions, which I think may actually be playing Dota as we speak. Asia still not in place. I'm sorry, China's still not in place. And for Southeast Asia, it's going to be Rave, MVP Hot 6, Mineski, Invasion, 5 Eva, Can't Say Whips, Arcanist, and MVP Phoenix. So those are the lineups as they break down for the current tournaments, and that is the tournament roundup. So it was fast, it was furious, and it was brutal at times, but that's what you need to know to follow your pro Dota scene today. That said, guys, we're done with the tournament stuff. We're going to roll into talking about the issues at hand right now. The person that we're about to bring on is, like I said, Bruno Tomas, for those of you who are just joining us. Right now, he is working hard to understand the field in terms of what regulation means, what is required, and a lot of other issues that have kind of come out within esports. So bear with us for just a second as I'm going to mute the mic and give him a call and get him connected so that we can bring him on to talk a little more about esports and esports regulation. All right, welcome to the show, Bruno. How are you doing this evening?
I'm fine, thank you. What about you?
I can't complain. I'm here. I'm doing a show. It's a beautiful Friday night. Nothing to really complain about, but we brought you here for a specific reason. I know that you have been working hard on esports in general and sort of the regulation issues that exist within the sport. Can you talk a little more about sort of what project you're working on, and then we'll go from there?
We need to make some alerts before, I think, so people will not misunderstand what we're trying to do. Sports are made by rules. The definition of sports are centered about rules. If you go through, study the philosophy of sports, you see hundreds of definitions of different rules. So when you talk about rules, you are talking about sports, and necessarily you are also talking about esports. If you think about the beginnings of the competitive scene in Dota, you find a lot of problems centered around rules, around how admins interpret rules, about how they execute the rules, about how they punish teams that violate rules, etc. And recently we saw a lot of cases about it. UG on the Dota 2 Canada Cup, Arteezy on the Dota Pit. The case between EG and Pain Gaming on Join Dota League, and so I got this idea to start checking all the different rule books on all different tournaments. So I asked friends on the different tournaments to show me the rule book. I want to see the rule book. First thing, not all rule books are publicly available.
Interesting. So let me stop you for a second. Do you think that not having? Do you think the rule book should be public available?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, every serious league in the world have the rule book publicly available. LCS, NBA, NFL, any serious league have it.
Okay. So
it should not be different here if we want to be professionals.
okay. So knowing that, continue with what you were sort of talking about regarding once you got your hands on those rule books.
So I started looking at all the different rule books. Join Dota rule book, Dota Pit rule book, Dota 2 Canada rule book, the Beyond the Summit, the Star Ladder and Beyond the Summit, they use the same rule book. I could not find a rule book for LCS, for ESL, for DreamHack I couldn't find at all. The international I couldn't find at all. DAC I couldn't find. So that's a problem.
Okay, so from the ones that you did manage to get your hands on, did you see a lot of errors or a lot of problems that need to be fixed?
Yeah.
What do you think were the most glaring issues?
I bet you remember some months ago we saw a lot of cases of match fixing in different disciplines of your sport, like StarCraft 2 and CSGO. You remember this?
Yeah.
So I had the idea of checking in the different rule books if they had anything about gambling, about betting. Only one rule book had a rule forbidding players to. Players, managers, and everyone else involved in the game. Only one rule book had a rule forbidding them to do this and actually establishing a punishment for the ones getting caught. That is the most glaring issue. But when you look at the whole rule book, you see a lot of mistakes. First, the rules are vague. They are not precise. A rule is meant to define what the game, both what happens inside the game and what happens outside the game. It means to regulate how you behave inside and outside the game. But the rules are so vague. In the end, it's up to an admin to decide what's happening. Instead of having a complete and precise rule book to guide you and make the whole competitive circuit something predictable, because the rules are vague, it is a complete chaos.
So when you look to these rule books, have you heard of or have you seen as part of this or separate maybe handbooks for admins to help with these decisions that they have to make?
Well, not really.
Okay.
It's on the other hand, I think it's very easy to blame admins for what's happening. I think that is pretty unfair. I think we should ask a couple of questions about admins, because I play Dota since 2005. I work at Gozu Gamers. I wrote stuff at Team Liquid. I have a long time in the competitive scene. In my experience, most of the people that work in the competitive scene do it without earning any money. They are not professionals. In most cases, the admins, they are not trained to do it. They don't have the expertise to do it. They are not earning any money to do it. They do it in their own free time. So it's honestly very, very unfair. True. Simply throw them. Look at what is happening. You give them a bad rule book and you throw them to the lions, literally. The question that the community needs to start thinking And I mean it needs to start thinking, because this happens in every competitive sport. It happens in basketball, it happens in soccer, football, etc. Is what is a good rule book? What we need to change in order to keep evolving. We want to improve. We want our rules to respond to the necessities of our players. We don't want rules to stop us.
Do you think this is something that each individual organization should handle, or is this something that we could hope that perhaps a summit of organizers could come together and just create one sort of mandated Dota rulebook that all the teams can get behind? Because it seems like a lot to read for a team who's playing in, 8 different tournaments at the same time.
Yeah. In an ideal world, of course, we need a ruling body. We need something to govern what's happening. But I think because of the particularities of the Dota scene, we don't have this. We have some big tournaments with big rule books. For example, the Star Ladder rule book. It's a pretty decent rule book, because they don't use a vague language, for example, to establish what is not allowed at all. They don't use a vague language to establish, for example, what's the punishment for that precise violation. For example, let's say some team refused to do an interview. You have the precise punishment for that. You are not under the risk of an admin giving a team a huge, completely unproportional punishment because they violate these rules. The punishment is completely precise, is completely predictable on that book. Star Ladder is quite a big league, so they need a big rule book.
Right.
I think that if a tournament takes a scene seriously, they need a good rule book. How they will manage to do it is a problem, because in terms of industry, what would you need to do? You need to hire someone with the expertise.
Right.
Someone who knows the ethos, the ambience of the competitive scene, and honestly, someone who knows law, a lawyer. You need a lawyer.
So
I'm sorry, just out of curiosity, I was talking with a lawyer who is interested in esports, and he told me that just recently a guy hired me to do one of these rule books. It took me a lot of hours. It was a 40-page rule book. It's quite big, because a rule book needs to cover everything. It needs to regulate what happens inside the game, outside the game. It needs to regulate. It needs to have codes of conduct, both inside and outside the game. It needs to regulate streaming. It needs to regulate not only the players, but managers, but everyone else involved in the making of the game. It needs to be big. So you need to have someone with the expertise.
So, from your research, let's summarize this to make it easy, I think, for people to sort of process. It sounds like your lawyer friends or the people you've talked to say that regulation is a necessity. Yeah. But right now, it is just not there.
Yeah. There are many reasons for that.
Okay.
Two principal reasons. In general, the people involved in the competitive scene, they lack the expertise to do this.
Okay.
And that's not to blame them. It's because it's really hard. You need to have someone with the expertise. And secondly, because that costs money. And at the moment, this is not a priority to the organizers.
Right. Well, because I could be wrong. There may be sponsors out there, and if you're a sponsor who says this, kudos to you. But there's no sponsor that comes on board for a tournament and says, what's your legal team look like? They simply say, who's playing in your tournament?
Yeah.
So
But-
that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but honestly, it's kind of time to actually think about it. Just think about what's happening in CS:GO, what's happening in StarCraft, all the cases of match fixing. All it needs is one bad case to throw your tournament, to throw all your business into the dirt. So it's kind of time to see this as an investment.
I agree with that. I think that is absolutely right, and honestly, I can't agree more. I cannot agree more because I think that you're right on with everything you say. It fits with basic business practices and traditional sports, but it's got to be tough. I think, when you decide to organize a tournament, and a lot of these tournaments start small, right? Like Dota 2 Canada Cup is a great example of a tournament that started out with 12 teams, a guy and his friend running it from a basement essentially, and now has grown into a decent sized prize pool that was just faced with a huge cheating issue. And they had to make a call. So at what point, and I think this is where the struggle is, do you go from being a Dota enthusiast who's excited about throwing a tournament to a tournament organizer / president who has a legal team to back up what's happening?
Yeah, that is tough because of the reality of our competitive scene. It doesn't make sense for the Dota 2 Canada Cup to have such a thing because the tournament they're holding is not big. It does not justify the investment. But when you think ESL One, when you think of MLG, we have a lot of different offline events. When you have these big leagues, you kind of need a very comprehensive and complete rule book to guide, to make everything predictable. If we look at any other serious competitive league, no team will ever join a tournament that possesses bad rules, a tournament that is not predictable, a tournament that does not tell you how do you appeal of a decision, when do you appeal, how to proceed, how do you do things. Rules are made for this. The big, I think that smaller tournament it's completely okay. By the way, the Dota 2 Canada Cup rules, if we think on the size of the tournament, it's not that bad. I think that the main problem I see on the Dota 2 Canada Cup is that they are not precise on how they decide about punishment. You have rules about punishment that simply says when you break the rule, you might be punished this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. In the end, it's the admin who decide. But it's very possible for the admin to commit a mistake. And because other tournaments take their decision as a fact, if you remember, RG got excluded from joining Dota, got removed from the summit and all the tournaments because of their decision, you have a problem here. Look for example at what happened at the MLG during Dota League. Between a match between pain and complexity. The admins had this rule that both teams, one would play in their server, call complexity complained. The admins told them, you either play or you forfeit.
Right.
And they did not use the same criteria to Evil Genesis. That is something bad. Ideally, you want the team submitted to the same criteria, to submitted to the same rules. That is a problem. Why this happened? Because you have a very vague rule book that in the end leaves everything in the shoulders of an admin. And sometimes this admin might not have the same training of someone who was trained to do this, who is paid to do this, etc.
Makes sense. So that's I think that all makes sense. I think most of us can agree with that. Bruno, I definitely appreciate you coming on the show today. I do want to say this, guys, to all of you who are listening, whether it's live or on the podcast or at the YouTube later on. I want to give a big props to Bruno, because when I asked him to be on the show, he commented. He said, English isn't my first language, but I think I can handle this. And I want to say that it was a great job. I think it was phenomenal information that you brought us. Do you know when this article is going to get published?
Well, I'm still collecting information. I still want to get ESL rulebook. I still want to get more information before I finalize the draft. And I still also need to show it to the lawyer. He wants also to co-author this.
So once the lawyer sees it, once everything's written up, then we'll get it published. So
yeah.
What I'll do is I'll have you, when that's ready, let me know. Just get in touch with me or send me a Skype message, and I'll make sure that we talk about it on the show and get that out to all the viewers as well, because I think this is going to be a really interesting study, especially since you brought those lawyers on board. But before we sign off, do you have any last thoughts or anything that you want to say to everybody before we sign out?
I want people to know that talking about this does not mean that we are bashing people that organize tournaments. People need to understand that talking about this is natural. If you look at the evolution of gaming, you will see that people talk about rules constantly. We can pinpoint moments where game completely changed for the better or for the worst when we look at how the rules are organized. So it's natural to talk about this, and we need to talk about this. If we want our competitive scene to grow, we need to evolve in this aspect.
Awesome.
And other than that, shout out to my friends at Team Liquid, shout out to everyone else who is on the chat laughing at my English. I'm sorry, guys.
I assure you they're not laughing at your English. They're laughing at just how happy you are right now.
I mean, my mother teaches English, so I had the chance. I had the chance to grow learning both Portuguese and English. But to talk in English it's been quite a while. I think the last time that happened was with the other Bruno when we were taking care of Dota Academy.
Absolutely. No, I think you did a great job, and I was very impressed. Like we said, we'll get your article out. I appreciate you being on the show. Guys, stick around. We're going to flip the overlays, run a quick message, and then be back. If you are interested in chiming in and giving your 2 cents, now is the time for listener calls. So get at me over on the Razer comms, or go ahead and hit me up on Skype. Either one works, and we'll be right back with viewer calls and the last word. So stick around. All right, well, we're back. See, that's the spot where we're going to experiment with putting in possibly commercials or things like that to the show to help sort of improve funding. There's a lot of things I want to add to the show, but we need funding to do it, and that's the first step. So great thank you to Bruno for being here. Now I want to hear from you guys. So if you do have something to say, if you want to sound off or get it off your chest, this is the time to do it. If not, Toffees will just start talking about whatever's going on and how he feels about it. So I assure you I'd much rather hear from you guys. And I think that we've got on the line Makai, if he wants to go ahead and give us a holler. He's got something to say about region discrimination, if that's right. So Makai, if you want to go ahead and hit that call button right now, we'll get you in here. All right, 1 second while we get the sound issue fixed up. And now when we talk about region discrimination, which I think he's going to comment on, that's sort of talking about... oh, here we go. So let's get Makai real quick. Hey, Makai, how are you doing? Makai, are you there?
Yeah.
All right, welcome to the show. Glad to have you. What was your 2 cents on region discrimination?
Yeah, so I just think Pose is a bit ridiculous. I don't know your opinions on it, but basically, like, there's so much points in there that makes no sense, like how Korea got directly invited to Star Ladder, or why they get so many events and stuff like that. If you just take into consideration that Korea is so big with StarCraft and LoL and all that stuff, it makes sense that they have a big Dota scene there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And saying that South America should have that treatment is not really fair, considering that Korea already has so much investors in esports compared to South America.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
so sort of break this down for me. Do you think that what specific regions do you think are being discriminated against, and do you think it's just based on invites, or are there other things that you think are causing the problem?
I don't think it's really discrimination compared to the Dota quality, and also the fact that the Brazilian internet and all that stuff is not as good as in some other regions. You could compare it more to STA than to anything else, that it's not always stable and that they don't have that many great teams. Like, I'll say Not Today is one of the best team I've ever, like, they put on one of the best show, and I love to see them at events, but I couldn't say the same about any other South American team.
Okay.
And I just think that if you, like, there's some events that give them great spots. Like, I don't know if you know Dota regions. It's basically they give a spot for EU West, US West, US East, and also South America. And I've talked to the founder of the Dota region, since he's my friend, and he told me that if they wanted to make sure that everything was fair, if the finals go EU West and South America, they play it on US West, so the ping is the same, instead of like everybody else saying that one should be played on each. How would that be fair for a South American team to play on EU West and US team playing on South America?
So it sounds like you're saying pick a server and stick to it.
More like it should be. There's no middle. That's the problem with the region's difference.
Interesting. Well, I think that's definitely something to take into account, and I appreciate you calling into the show, Makai. Make sure you call back another time, but region discrimination, I think that you're on track, that is an issue that does need to be addressed in a lot of ways. So, Makai, thanks for calling in. If you do still want to call in, guys, go ahead and hit me up, but we're going to start wrapping this thing and talking a little bit about the issues at hand, or sort of what's going on. That's been the big brouhaha, if you will. And the topics on the issue right now that we're hearing in Reddit, that we're hearing all over the place, we're hearing on Twitter. I mean, I went to sleep last night, and my Twitter went crazy bones about whatever was happening in this game. There's region discrimination being talked about, but my question is this: is that even a thing? Yes, we know that the debacle with DAC and the idea of Cloud9 being a North American team was sort of outrageous, and the question was raised multiple times on this show and other places. Are tournaments stacking the decks to get the best teams into it? I don't think that that's a question. It makes logical business sense. Is it the most healthy thing for the scene? Probably not. Is it going to happen unregulated? Yes, it is. That said, discrimination-wise, when we talk about servers, that's a different story altogether. But how can you really control that? Valve only has so many servers set up, right? When you want to play a South American or North American team, you got to choose US East, US West, or Brazil. Those are your only options, and the pings are widely variable. And that's something that it's not necessarily discrimination so much as maybe it's just bad luck that you live in a certain area, I guess. I don't know how to explain that. I mean, when it comes to it, I've lived in places in the U.S. even that have just terrible connections, and if I wanted to start a team, I can tell you right now, I certainly would not live there. BTS is a great example of a studio who none of the guys who founded it lived in L.A. They moved there because they wanted to make sure that they had a good connection and a strong internet for competitive coverage. And that's one of those things where you say, I want your team to grow, but if you're going to roll with the big dogs, you got to get a better internet connection. You got to find something closer to a big server. So that I think is a side topic to run alongside of region discrimination. Next one up is the situation sort of applies to servers that the rules state about servers. And I think that Bruno was on track with this. Things just aren't specific enough. In the case of the the debacle, I guess I should say, between EG and Pain that sort of has blown out of proportion. The rules are pretty simple. It says everything will play on US East unless the admin and the teams decide otherwise, which is fine because it doesn't make sense for two teams from South America to play each other on a US East server. I get that. The issue that comes into play here, I think, with that big argument, and this is worth noting and it wasn't brought up very often, was the fact that the first game was played on US East, but a large portion of players for EG are US West players. So the pings would not be optimal to US East. Were they better than Brazil? Yes. But based on the way the rules are laid out, if our South American team, if the guys from Pain wanted to play on a Brazil server, the first game should have been played on US West and then switched back and forth, from what I understand. That said, if it's going to be played on US East 1, and it should be played on US East 2. That's a rule issue, and that's an admin ruling to make, and this is what Bruno was talking about. Are admins equipped to handle this sort of thing? And this is a tough position, and I'm going to go on record here. Well, the other stuff, it is what it is. I can't get too much into regions, and I will give a little bit of a comment on what PPD said regarding trash talk in lobby, but this is a soapbox that I need to get on, and it is this. Admins are not trained enough, and they are not paid enough. You have an admin, his job is to orchestrate, execute, and prepare tournament games for massive prize pools. I am a referee standing in for a game that could very well determine the health of a team for a $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 reward, and I'm doing it for free? That's crazy to me. How can you expect them to perform if they are volunteering for the position? If I build a house with volunteers, I expect it to be a lot worse than if I hire a licensed contractor to do the thing. That's an issue. That said, admins, if you are going to volunteer, if you're going to do this job, you need to cowboy the fuck up. And I cussed it, but I'm dropping it here. This is absolutely true, is that you need to be ready to say stuff. Now, Charlie is in chat, and from what I read and what I understand, Charlie told the admin no, and the admin, and everybody was arguing like, why is Charlie a jerk? Why did he go so hard on the admin? Why did the admin stand up to complexity and not to EG? Here's the deal. Managers are paid to represent their team. They are always, unless they're not really up to wanting to do their job or they feel really nice for the day, going to do whatever they can to advocate the best conditions for their team to win. A manager is not paid to be fair. A manager is not paid to make everyone feel nice, and a manager above all else is not paid to be nice, especially to admins and owners, or owners of tournaments. So if an admin tells you this is how we're going to do it, the only way to handle that is to say, no, I have the power to make the rules. I'm going to do it this way. And if you don't like that, go talk to the owner and you can forfeit this match. Or we can do a replay if it gets overturned. That said, a lot of these admins, and I know this because I got asked to admin a little bit, do this because they want to be in the same lobby as the people that they love. They want to hang out with these pro players. They want to get a chance to see the tournaments firsthand. And I respect and love that. But you bring a team like EG in, and these admins are going to be a little bit starstruck, and it's going to be tough for them to fight back. So train them better, maybe pay them better, but definitely if you're going to do it, stand up for the rules and make your stand and stick with it. That's what I'm sticking with on that one. All right, so now let's move to the other big topic. And this is the one that I think is actually a little more relevant. Nothing will come of this who picked what server. South America's going to be mad because EG got the advantage. EG fans won't care, and then eventually it'll sort of blow over. The real issue is what happened inside of the chat. And this is what I'm curious for you guys about. Chat is an interesting place. Pre-game chat, usually tournaments have it blocked. They don't show it unless it's maybe the NEL. What it is the fact that that pregame chat is a place for admins, coaches, managers, and players to talk. Is that meant to be public? Probably not. In fact, I can go on a limb and say no. This reminds me of a locker room or a meeting with captains and referees before a game in traditional sports. Things said in there are generally kept in confidence with the understanding that it's not going to come out because you want to be truthful and honest and not worry about public image in those discussion chambers. That said, PPD's statement, we'll pull it up on screen for you guys, was salty, to say the least. I don't know the circumstances. I don't know how long the guys have been playing. I do imagine that what probably happened here is the guys wanted to get through this. They wanted to move on with their night. It was probably running late, and seeing an argument about servers coming up after the first game was absolutely frustrating. And that would probably prompt anyone, including myself, to say some words. The question is, were they okay to say? And then my second question is, were they okay to publish? Now, it looks like I am getting a message here from Nahaz, is interested in possibly calling into the show. So we'll go ahead and connect with him and see what he's got to say about the topics before we wrap up my opinions and close the show for the night. Let me go ahead and get Nahaz here. Hey, Nahaz, how you doing tonight? Nahaz, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up, man?
There we are. How are you doing this evening?
I'm all right, buddy.
Awesome, awesome. So glad you called in. Let's. I'll actually throw over so we can do a little camera shot here, since why not? Living the dream.
I finally got the webcam going.
Nice. That's nice. You got classy bookcases behind you and like good lighting effects. That's the kind of place a professor lives. I like it. It's a bookcase show between the two of us.
Well, thank you.
So what do you think? We're talking right now about the lobby chat, the PPD thing,
right.
Sort of what happened there.
Right. So I like PPD a lot, and I want to say that because I'm about to be a little bit hard on him. I tweeted when he put out his DAC draft analysis that I thought it was some of the best analytical content I've ever seen for Dota. So, I'm about to say some stuff which out of context is going to sound like I'm flaming him, but I'm really a big fan of his. That said, so you were talking about lobby chat a minute ago, and the way I think about it is that lobby chat is kind of like business correspondence. Okay. You put something in an email to coworkers as a part of a project. You put something, when I'm emailing my assistant and my colleagues about admissions, about the students that we're admitting to our master's program, right? Those are things that are said in confidence. Those are things that I expect not to be repeated, okay? But it's also understood in any of those contexts that there's a line that when you cross it, that stuff's going to come out.
Right.
If in the process of communicating about admissions, I were to harass my assistant or something like that, all right, that's going to come out.
True.
And those emails can be used against me. And that's kind of how I think. That's kind of how I think about lobby chat. That, you know what? Absolutely, there are things that are said in lobby chat that are not for public consumption. And I tell all of the stat people and the casters that I work with that, look, this is part of the trust that you're being given when you're working games and you're being given lobby passwords, that you don't post that kind of stuff online. But PPD crossed a line, period. And I think he deserved what he said getting out, if indeed that is what he typed and what he said, and it seems to be. And I think he deserves to get a little bit of backlash for it. And this is also against the backdrop. Recently, if you follow his Twitter, if you follow some of the things that he's been saying, he's been making a lot of comments about online qualifiers, and that he doesn't like online qualifiers, and he thinks that tournaments are having too many online games. And you know what? I'm when you add the two together, I'm getting a little bit tired of it. I mean, at the end of the day, your sponsors pay you to play Dota. Tournaments pay out prize money to play Dota. Your fans want to watch you play Dota. Shut up and play Dota. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't like a tournament's format, if you think that there are too many games being played online, and this is where I couldn't agree with what Bruno said more. If you don't like the rules ought to be out there. There is absolutely no excuse for a tournament right now to not be publishing their rules. We are relying on crowdfunding, for goodness sake. Okay, a tournament owes the Dota community that. And if you don't like that tournament's rules, don't play.
Right.
But I don't want to hear this bitterness, because, you guys are getting, well, I shouldn't say they are, because we still have a long way to go in that regard. We have a long way to go in terms of representing players, but we are at the point, especially somebody like PPD, they're getting paid like pros.
Right.
Okay? Act like a pro. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, that makes sense. We brought this up before. I brought it up when Eternal Envy sort of went on his tweet spree about a week and a half ago. The idea that you have a persona to present. Now, that said, Charlie was on the show and talked a little bit about how, his job as a manager is just to make sure that the guys do their job. They're there to play. He takes care of them when they do stupid stuff, and he makes sure that they don't say racial slurs or attack people. But at the end of the day, a player is a player. And we do see this. We see people at the NFL and the NBA and the Premier League. I think last year we saw 3 suspensions for racial slurs on the field. But at the end of the day, I ask you this. Where is the line between trash talk and unacceptable chatter? Because to me, this is... So let me be on the record here. PPD's insults were not okay, especially in the context that I think an emerging team who's trying to make it out of a tough region can really be crushed by a comment like that. Now, if you turned it around, though, and Payne had said that to PPD, on the opposite side, would anybody have cared?
Okay, but I look at it like this, okay? You know what? The Patriots probably, in certain NFL seasons in the last 10 years, they probably could have come out and said, you know what? We're just better than everybody else. Just put us in the playoffs.
Right, but no.
You know what? We are so much better than everybody else. We're clearly going to make the playoffs. You know what? You don't even have to give us a bye.
But that's press conference. That would be press conference trash talk, which I think is a different ball game.
But
this feels more to me.
But how would fans react, though? That's my question.
They'd be angry. Not Patriots fans. Patriot fans would say, "Yeah, well, it's true," and the opposite team's fans would be angry.
What? I think even Patriots fans would be angry. I think even Patriots fans would say, "You know what? What are we just? You're just going to say, okay, forget it." Refund all the season ticket money, right?
But
fans are paying to see you play Dota.
But in your context, it is a public forum. What this seems to me a little more like is that moment, and I don't know if you've played football or if you love football, but basically that moment before the quarterback snaps the ball, that the opposite tackle, who's playing center or the linebacker right behind the line is yelling at the quarterback, "I'm going to kill you. You can't stand up to me. You're a terrible quarterback. I'm going to rock your world." Like, this is pretty commonplace. And it feels like one of those instances where trash talk gets caught by the microphone and everybody hears it. And then there's sort of a slap on the hand, and then everybody goes back to the next game and trash talks again. Is it that sort of thing, or do you think this is a more serious case than that?
Well, I mean, that's why I brought up some of PPD's recent tweets and comments. I mean, this by itself, it's obviously a pretty egregious example, and I think that they're probably. I mean, I was very disappointed, right, on reading that. But in the context of some of the other things that he's been saying lately, I mean, if top teams adopt that attitude, right, that we don't have to play, we're too good to play, that really hurts the scene. And, what Charlie said that you quoted a while ago, that's absolutely right. This is an adversarial system, and that's how our legal system works. That's how a lot of other negotiating systems work. Charlie is not there to ensure fairness. Charlie is there to represent his boys, and he does that really well.
Insanely well.
And part of the problem is that there aren't enough Charlies, and I can't believe I just said that. Part of the problem is that a lot of other teams don't have the kind of competent representation that makes the adversarial system work. Because for an adversarial system to function properly, you need competent representation on all sides. And again, that goes back to what Bruno had to say, that, I'm sorry, I've been in some of these lobbies, okay? These kids that are doing the admin work for a lot of these tournaments, they're not going to argue with Charlie.
Oh, for sure.
They're out of their depth, man.
They're just happy to have Charlie talk to them half the time.
Right, again, and it's not the very last thing that I'm saying is that it's Charlie's fault. But those admins do need some rules to fall back on. Right? That's the point. Is that in an adversarial system, you either need both sides or all three sides to be competently represented, or you need some very strong rules structures so that the couple of people that have the most competent representation, don't go around unless you're O.J. Simpson getting away with murder. Makes
sense. And I do think that something to consider, and I think this is definitely goes to play with the PPD Payne issue, is that when you talk, and I think Jenkins from Leviathan laid this out really well in an article that he did, where he talked about the ultimate goal that they had when they started 6 months ago was to play a team like EG. Like they knew they wouldn't win. They had no actually. I mean, they desired to win, and they did all their strategizing. But it was like all month we get to play EG in this tournament. We're excited. We want to do well, and that's sort of, to me, one of the things that makes Dota such a great experience. The entry gate is low, and if you work hard, you can pull it off. I don't care what happens. I can pick up 40 pounds of pure muscle and drop 40 pounds of fat. I can go out and train every single day. I can pick up a football and pray to the Lord on my knees for 6 hours every morning. I am not going to make the Colts roster. I am not going to play against a Colts player. I am not going to be a pro football player. That said, that doesn't necessarily mean that if I did the same things in Dota, I wouldn't get a chance to play against EG or Secret or a top-tier team because of the open qualifier setups. And when something like this happens, because Pain's one of those teams, Pain is a homegrown team that's trying to work their way up, that's got to be sort of crushing. You know that they were looking forward to this game. They were training for this game. They were hoping to show well. I mean, I think the Dota 2 Lounge score was like 92.8% or something like that. So they're not going in thinking I'm going to win, but that sort of thing's just got to be soul-crushing.
I think that you put that beautifully, and that's exactly why I was so disappointed about this whole situation. That, you know, obviously there are the hats, and that's another discussion for a different day. But a big part of why crowdfunding has so much potential is exactly what you said, that people can see themselves. You know, people, I mean, take Twitch chat all the time. People look at these pro games and these pro players, and they're like, hey, man, I could do that. And, I mean, for me, that is about as realistic as adding 40 pounds of muscle. But, hey, you know, it's part of what makes it fun, and it's part of what makes our sport a great competitive endeavor. It is something that you can do all the time. And there, you know, to me anyway, I don't even think there is that big a skill gap between a lot of these teams. I think a lot of it is experience and playing together and being on top of the most recent strategies. But I mean, I don't think the skill gaps are all that big. So I do agree with what you're saying.
And on that point, I think PVD actually sort of confirmed that a little bit in the chat log when he said, you know, what if we play on South America and you beat us because we've got 300 ping? Did you deserve that win? And I think there is something to be said that at the highest levels, things like ping come into play because everyone's becoming so mechanically close to each other. So that is also true. I just love Dota because it's so wide open. But Nahaz, I really appreciate you calling into the show. Do you have any last thoughts that you want to share with the crowd before we wrap out?
Hey, thanks for having me on, and really good comments, by the way. I've been reading the chat as we're going along, and I think, you know, I think everybody is pretty much in agreement that you know, nobody really wants to flame PPD. I mean, he was frustrated. He was obviously in a stressful situation, and he said some things that were perhaps unwise. This just, I mean, this going forward, it is important that if we're going to talk about players' associations, and if we're going to talk about advancing the scene, you know, at some point there's a cost to be paid. And we need to have professional behavior by everybody involved. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. Well, thanks for calling in, Nahaz. We're going to flip back over and wrap up the show.
Night, everybody.
So, that said, guys, it is those are our calls for the moment. Hold on a second. Let's see. I just got a message from Charlie, the manager from EG. He would like to call in and give his 2 cents on the topic, so I'm going to go ahead and connect to him real quick. So bear with us as we roll over to our next guest. Hold on. There we go. Gotta love that Skype sound. All right, we did not make a connection, so let's see if we can fix that. While he's doing that, while I try to get Charlie fixed up on the line here, I do want to make a quick address. And this is, I don't know if you'll ever watch this, PPD, but as a Hoosier to another Hoosier, I think that you are doing a great job. I love watching you play. I think that you are phenomenal. I want to make sure that nobody thinks this is pure flame, but it is important to remember that you've become sort of a hero to a lot of Dota players, even in the Tier 2 and Tier 3 leagues. And while it's really easy to say stuff like this, and, you know, maybe even warranted in some cases, it can really, really be difficult for players to hear. All right, so let's give this one more shot and try to get Charlie here on the phone. Go ahead and give him a holler. All right, there we go. So we do have Charlie from EG. We're gonna no video, so we'll just stay on this this setup for you guys. How are you doing tonight, Charlie?
Is this working?
It is working. I can hear you.
Okay. I'm at my like shitty home setup. I'm not in the office. Oh, the hell's going? If shit breaks, it's because I don't know how to use a computer.
I understand. So so what's on your mind?
I'll just go ahead and start by saying like, if I definitely don't agree with what Peter said. If I were him in that position, I definitely wouldn't have said it. Regardless of whether that chat is supposed to be private or not, as a professional player, I think given the lack of, like, he wasn't prodded into doing that. He wasn't goaded to that. It just sort of came out. I don't think it was called for. However, as his manager, I'm not going to sort of. I might talk about it with him later, but but it's unnecessary now. Like, this is something that he already knows. All right, fucked up.
Right.
Shouldn't have done it. But as his manager, I'm not going to pass judgment on him.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Who he is, who he wants to be, is his own person. And I think he should. That's something that he needs to learn and develop on his own, like who he wants to be. I'm not going to, like, contrary to popular belief, I am not anybody's father.
Right.
And so that's my 2 cents on that. Like,
well, I mean,
for the record, I would not have done what he did.
But you make a great point. You're a team manager. You're not a player manager. We haven't hit the point where individual players. I mean, if we go to since we've been talking about the NFL, let's stick with the metaphor. NFL players answer to a coach and an owner, and then they have individual publicists, managers, agents who control their attitude and answer for things like this. The coach will never come out unless it's a really big issue and say, "Well, he was, you shouldn't say this, buddy," because that's not what he's paid to do. That said, go ahead. Sorry.
He didn't say anything racist.
Right.
Didn't say anything homophobic. Well, nothing bigoted. I don't give a shit. Like, as a manager, I don't give a shit. I mean, like, I don't think it was like good PR for us or the brand, but like ultimately this is, like, on a personal level, I don't really give a shit.
Right.
And then as far as like the other stuff, people like as far as like fighting for the rules or whatever, I think the large misconception here is that that somehow in getting to USE servers, I somehow strong-armed my way through, or I bullied my way through to get this. I think most people would be really surprised to know that it was actually not very confrontational at all. I compared to how I could have been, or compared to maybe what I've done in the past, this was not aggressive at all. This was kind of mild. All I really did was bring up the issue, and then the admin on his own brought up that rule set and said, I'll just lay out the story. Like a week before this match, it was brought up in the regular chat that that Brazilian teams would split one USC, one Brazilian server, and I messaged the admin in private and I said, if this is the case, we're going to have a really difficult time going through with this. Like, there's probably 0% chance we're going to play on Brazilian servers if you're going to enforce this. And I mentioned that, like, our home server is actually US West. We have 3 West Coast players. Like, US East is already is already a bit further away for us.
Right.
And then he brought up the rule, and he said that if what's it called? if the admin has the discretion to sort of to change this based off of servers or based off of what's fair. So basically a ping test. And they did a ping test, and it turned out US East was the fairest server. And that's literally it. I didn't have to throw around the fact that I never said that we were going to pull out of the tournament. Never said that, hey, we're EG, you should give us a wide berth. I literally just brought up pings, and that was it. I mean, so there's this misconception that I somehow was incredibly aggressive or whatever with this, and it's not the case. My tweet that has a lot of people polarized about, where I say if you're what I say, where I said I'm not apologizing for a damn thing if you're too weak, too passive, or too stupid to fight for what you want, blame for your own damn self. That was not in reference to the flaming or anything like that. It was mostly in a reference to Mike, where he was complaining that Complexity or the other American teams didn't get this, and part of it is me thinking that, like, listen, if you didn't get this is something that you should have brought up. And Mike said it was brought up, and they were forced to say, the admin presented them with the fact that you either play or you forfeit. And even after that, like, those aren't your own choices. Those aren't your only choices when presented with that. You have other options. I'm not going to say them publicly here.
Right.
But that's not the end of the road for you. Those are just the only two options presented, not the only two options available.
So I mean, at the end of the day, it's advocate for your players, and
I'm not even I'm not even telling you to be a bully.
Right.
Because I don't even feel like I was in this particular moment. Believe me, like, if you think that was, you've never been bullied in your life. It's not just, so I'm not saying be a bully. I'm saying look for other options. Do due diligence and search for other solutions. Like, people think that it's somehow easy for me because I have this team and I have this brand behind me to sort of, like, I don't know, bluster my way past, I don't know, admins to do something.
Right.
And that is so rarely the case, because most of the admins that I personally deal with are fairly experienced. I deal with them multiple times.
Right.
Like, I have to work with them constantly. So it's like, so when I work with Andre, when I work with Holy Master, when I work with like LD or whoever, like, on these issues, what am I like? These are people that I've known for a while. It's not like it's not like they're gonna take my shit. You know what I mean? It's like thinking that I can, like, bluster my way past these people with whatever. It doesn't cut it. Like, Holy Master is probably one of the, like, most, like, black and white, cut and dry admins there is.
Okay.
It's just about finding options. It's not about bullying people.
So let me pivot this just a little bit, since we've got you on the show, and ask you a little bit off of that topic, but I think in the same vein, is when is it appropriate, or is it appropriate at all, to release private chat logs, and who should have the privilege to do it?
From a normative standpoint, I agree with Alan on with Nahaz. That I think it's a very unclassy thing to do, unless you're sort of unless it's sort of your only option. You know what I mean? I think if Payne would have done it to us, like, if this situation was reversed, we would have never released these chat logs. I think, well, for the record, I think part of it has to do with our position. Part of it has to do with the fact that us and and my players care. We don't put much stock in I guess. I mean, this sounds really arrogant to say given the circumstances, but we don't put much stock in public opinion or Reddit or appealing to the masses.
Right. That makes sense, and I mean, I get it makes sense because you guys are, and I think people will argue with me on this, but essentially at this point, you are the best team in the world, based on the DAC performance.
As of now.
Say what?
As of now.
Yeah, I mean, but that's how sports work, right? You're the best until you lose, and that's just the way it is. So you don't have to fall back on making public opinion and make people feel good about themselves, but there is sort of a question of, should Payne have taken the chat logs to evil geniuses and said, organization, hey, this really hurt my players, you know, can we try to control this sort of thing, instead of just going to Reddit with it?
Sure. Because personally, I don't like the fact that he did it, personally, and if he would have brought it to us privately or whatever, we could have had a serious discussion about this, about what it is to be a sportsman. But you bring it publicly, now you have a whole different situation on your hands.
So there's two, I think there's a couple of fields of thought. A, we know that PPD is not happy with online tournaments and the amount of games that they have to play. And to a certain extent, I'm sure that there's a frustration, because this game was 10 o'clock at night or something like that?
It was 9 o'clock for him.
Okay, so it would have been
9-10 for him, yeah.
So 9-10, he's looking at 2 hours or so potentially of play against a team that maybe he doesn't want to have to spend 2 hours playing because the advance is sort of a guarantee. And if you're a fan of the team, I apologize, Payne, but statistically the chances of winning were very low. That said, we can sort of understand the frustration a little bit.
Sure, understand it, but I'm not going to make excuses for
for sure.
I think regardless of whatever frustrations he was feeling, those should be separate things.
Absolutely. Now, but here is the real question, and this is not as, regards to PPD. A lot of viewers have sort of sent me messages and said that they think that if this had been a Tier 3 CIS team or a Tier 3 Chinese team, the same comments would not have been expressed. Do you think the community at large, English-speaking community at large, has a feeling about South American Dota that kind of came out here?
If Payne was a Tier 3 CIS team or Tier 3
so if you had been sitting in there with a Tier 3 CIS team instead, a lot of people are saying PPD would not have said the same thing. He said it because they were a South American team.
No, he would have absolutely said the same thing.
So it had nothing to do with the fact they were South American?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And I think that that's something that's definitely worth bringing up, because a lot of the conversation has resolved around this was race-driven. And I read it, and I've looked at it, and I've spoken with him, and I don't think it's race-driven. It just strikes me, maybe a little elitist-driven,
Sure.
but definitely not race-driven.
No, absolutely not. I mean, he's it's definitely not. I think people that are saying that are looking for probably an easy word to throw around, an easy podium to get behind. And I think it's lazy thinking, and I think it's just bias. But
so Phage Guy apparently has to be the statistics man in chat and says, I can't say that something's predictive without the proper controls. I contend that the controls are the 5 players for each team, and you can pretty much predict which way it's going to go. That said, Charlie, do you have any last thoughts before we sign out? I appreciate you calling in and sort of clarifying some things, because I think that was very helpful.
No, other than the fact that now I really want to go to Carnival now.
Right? Because 30 times a day. 30 times a day.
I'm just an Amerifat virgin. So.
Oh my god, that's got to become copy pasta. That was my favorite part of the whole drama, was that statement. So the funny thing about it is that Arteezy retweeted that, and then Jimmy got on the fuck EG bandwagon, Mm-hmm.
and the ironic thing is that those two are just being completely sarcastic.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask them how they really feel, they would be like, they would have been in our boat. Like, maybe not, like, they probably wouldn't have said the things that Peter said, but
Right.
like completely sarcastic. And Brazil's just like, thank you guys for supporting us.
Right. Well, keep in mind, this is, I think, an interesting point Charlie brings up. When a lot of this stuff happens on Twitter, it goes to Reddit and it gets a lot of comments. And there's two kinds of Twitter accounts, right? There is the professional Twitter account that's designed for public relations and to put forward an appearance to the community. And there's the Twitter account that is made because you want to communicate with people that you know who are friends. And generally, Arteezy is a great example of this. He could give a shit about the PR. He's just there to go back and forth with friends. And
he's here to stir the. He just wants to
yeah,
stir shit.
he wants to have fun. And as far as he's concerned, read sarcasm or not, he doesn't care. But the person he's tweeting at does know that. So the problem is the 66,000 followers he has.
He's got 100K now.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I guess Secret got him a lot of followers. Why couldn't you get him that many followers, Charlie?
All right, fuck off.
But that's what I'm saying. He has 100,000 followers. 3,000 of those are friends, maybe.
Been winning them.
Well played. But that said, as you guys read these tweets, keep in mind that they're not always designed for a public relations issue. A lot of the time it's trash talk or sarcasm from player to player and friend to friend. And that's something I think is important to remember about Twitter in general. But Charlie, I appreciate you calling in. Thank you so much. It's been illuminative. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to go with it anyway. And have a wonderful evening.
The word you're looking for is illuminating.
It has been illuminating and illuminative.
I don't think that's a word.
3 college degrees, people. 3. And none of them are in English. All right. Have a great night, Charlie.
All right.
All right, guys. So, you got a lot of different opinions here. You got a lot of 2 cents. Mine, which is probably less important than a lot of others. But I think that we covered a lot of interesting things. Moral of the story, and I think I can go out on a limb and just say this, and everyone who called in would agree, let's get some rule books written. Let's get them out before the tournament starts. Let's train our admins right, and let's cowboy up and take care of those rules, because that's the next step towards sort of making these things solid. It's been wonderful having you guys here. I really appreciate it. Remember, the show was brought to you by Namecheap.com, a domain registrar that wants to support esports and is reaching out actively towards small programs, helping them grow, just like they want to help small businesses get bigger. So go check them out. And if you want to support directly, patreon.com/Toffees is a great way to do it. The money that we get there goes right back into the show, occasionally diapers, but almost always into the show. And we need some more funding so that I can do things like bring on some pro players. I need bounties, I need things like that to get them here. And that's going to be the next big step. So thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Remember, come back on Monday. We'll have a good show for you there on sort of what's been happening on the weekend. I also know Anuxie, I promised you she's coming on the show. She said she's going to be on next week. She's been sick this week. So the set designer will be on to talk a little bit about the set design business, hats, and sort of what it looks like from the other side. So that should be a pretty good experience. So make sure you come back and check that out. It was great spending the evening with you guys. And as always, Toffees out.